Hello and welcome to this Ableton Live 9 Beginner Starters Guide. So in this quick video, I'm going to show you Ableton Live 9 in 5 easy steps. So if you're brand new to Ableton Live, you might be looking at this interface, you might be looking at the screen and thinking, what on earth is going on? How do I use this? This looks so different to other digital audio workstations. And I'm going to show you the 5 main steps. And by the end of this, it shouldn't really look that hard. The things I'm going to show you will allow you to get up and start making music straight after this video. Of course, there is a lot of stuff I will be brushing over, as this is just a 5 easy step guide. But if you do want to continue learning with me, make sure you check out my complete guide to Ableton Live 9, which is over 8 hours long. Visit u.tomasgeorge.com. This is my online academy if you do want to go into a lot more detail. Okay, so let's get started, and I'll start off with step 1, which is about the arrangement and the session view. After this, we're going to have a look at step 2, which is about instruments, racks and samples. Then we're going to have a look at step 3, which is about MIDI and audio effects. Then step 4, which is recording to the arrangement. And step 5, which is editing to the arrangement. If you want to skip forward to any of these other steps, just check out the show notes below and it allows you to skip to the other sections. But yeah, let's get started with step 1, the arrangement and the session view. Okay, so you might be looking at Ableton Live now and think, what are all these things here? What are all these vertical lines? I'm used to it going across. This is because we have 2 different views in Ableton Live. We have the session view, which is this one here. So the session view has these kind of clips going down. And then we have another one called the arrangement view. To get to the arrangement view, all we have to do is hit the tab button. And now you're probably more used to this if you've been using other digital audio workstations. So this is more of a linear fashion, so it's time-based. So this is kind of similar to, say, Logic Pro, Pro Tools, that kind of thing. So we have our instruments here, and going across is time. If we hit the tab button, we go back to the session view. They're both good for different things. The way I normally like to write music is to create clips in the session view and then record these clips into the arrangement view. So we've got MIDI instruments here, and then we have audio. So to create a clip, all we have to do is just double click on these boxes here. So just double click on this, and then this allows us to actually type in some MIDI information. We can just drag stuff around like so, and we can actually hit B, which will bring up a pencil tool, and then we can just kind of draw stuff in. At the moment you won't hear any sound because we haven't actually added any instruments, but this is kind of the way you can actually just draw in MIDI information. If you have a MIDI keyboard plugged in, you can actually record it in. I'm just going to show you how you can just type it in and just start making music straight away. So let's just for now just get any instrument and just drag it over. We'll have a look at instruments, samples and racks a bit later on. So now we can do this, and then we can arm the track by hitting the circle button here. So once this is red, it will be armed. We can select more than one by holding down command. Same as solo. If you just hit one, it will solo one. If you hold down command, it will solo more than one. And you'll notice when this red button is selected here, you'll see these squares actually turn to circle. When there's a circle, it means you can record them basically, they're armed. Then all you have to do is just hit circle, and then you can play notes in on your MIDI keyboard. That's another way. Or you can type them in on the piano roll editor. So that's basically it. That's kind of how you can record in the session view. And then they go along. So if you actually go over here, you'll notice there is this play button. So if we hit this play button, this will play all of the clips on this row here. If we go down, it will play the clips on the row below, So if I hit this one, it will play anything that's in this instrument. Same with audio. And we can create new tracks, go in File, New Audio Track, insert MIDI track. There's the key commands as well you can use. So it's Shift, Command T for a MIDI track, Shift, just Command and T for an audio track. And kind of the same principle, there's just another one adds in. You can create more of these going down by hitting Command and I. You notice more will enter there. And yeah, you can actually just delete them by selecting them over here and just backspace to delete. This will delete them. And that's kind of how, yeah, the session view works. It's about creating clips, and then you can play these clips in. So later we're going to have a look actually recording to the arrangement, which is step 5. If you want to skip to that, you can have a look at recording to the arrangement now. But I recommend just waiting, and I'll go through step by step, just getting started really in Ableton Live, because it can be quite daunting. You open this up, you're like, whoa, what is going on? So it's really just about building clips in the session view. And the arrangement view, you can actually record like this as well. So you can arm the tracks here. So if you notice, there's a circle button here, and you can record in this way. But I prefer the way of just recording in the session view and then going over to the arrangement view. I'll show you later on how to actually do this. But this is just a basic overview of the session view and the arrangement view. Hopefully this makes a bit more sense now. It's really just about clips in Ableton. It's called Ableton Live for a reason, because a lot of people like to trigger these and get different things really for live performance. So you can get stuff like, let me just grab it. It's here. It's the push 2. So you can get the push 2, which is the Ableton Live controller. So this kind of triggers these clips on here. So you can trigger them and do different things on this. I have a look at the push 2 in a lot more detail in the complete Ableton Live 9 course. So I won't be looking at this tutorial. But really, the push 2 allows you to actually use Ableton Live more of as performance. So you're using this as a controller rather than just pressing buttons on your laptop, because live it will look a lot better actually having a modular to actually kind of move around rather than just literally pushing buttons on your laptop. So that's just kind of a quick overview. We can add new clips. We can hold down option to drag more. We can just write in whatever we want. Let's try and get something slightly musical. We can zoom in, hit up here. You notice there's a magnifying glass. So here we go. Same this way, there's a magnifying glass. And then let's just draw in. Okay, it's something really, really basic. Probably sounds awful, but just to get the idea. So you'll notice here there's some arrows as well. This allows us to actually drag back and forth, and we can create loops. There's a loop button down here. If the loop button is selected, it will loop the information. And that's just kind of how we can do stuff. And then all you have to do is just hit the play button on the clip. We can delete clips with backspace. We can color them by right-clicking, choose a different color. And then, that's kind of how it works. But to get information, the MIDI information to actually play on a MIDI track, you will need an instrument. So next we're going to be looking at instruments, racks, and samplers. Okay, so I hope this Ableton Live piece of software is starting to make a bit more sense now. Like I said, when you first get started in Ableton Live, it is a bit different because it doesn't look the same as other digital audio workstations. It's called Ableton Live because initially it was designed for live performance, and now people seem to be using it a lot more for producing music because it's fantastic for that as well. So now we're going to have a look at instruments, racks, and samplers. So if we look on the side here, you'll notice it says instruments. If we go along, we've got these different instruments, and we can actually hit the little drop down arrow here, and this will give us some kind of presets. I recommend starting with the presets, and then after a while you can kind of sculpt and create your own sounds, but it's a lot easier if you're brand new just to drag on some presets, mess around, and just kind of get some sounds going. So let's just choose any of these. We can also just click on any of them, and it will preview the sound. So let's try this one. Saw 3 muted bass. Just drag it on, and that will replace what was on before. And let's just type in some MIDI information. So all we have to do is just double click on the empty space here, and now the pencil tool will appear. We can zoom in on the side with this magnifying glass, and let's just type something in. Okay, that'll do. All I've really done is just typed in C and 1 A sharp, or let's move myself out of the way, 1 A sharp or B flat. Okay, and now we can just play this by hitting this play button here. So that's an instrument. It's really how we do it. It's really simple. Now let's just leave that rolling, and now we can actually add on some drums. This is one of my favorite things about Ableton Live is the drum rack. It's so amazing. Okay, so let's go down to drum rack here. Drag this onto another MIDI track, and you'll notice here we've got all these little squares, and these squares are all little samples. So they're little samplers really, so we can actually drag in our own sounds to create our own drum rack. What we can do is actually load a preset, but we will have to actually make the presets ourselves. But for now, let's just drag in some samples just so you know how to actually do this. So if you click on samples here, you should have a few samples, and we can just type in some drum sounds like kick. If you don't have any samples here, you can actually add on really any audio. So any sound wave, AIF, an MP3, a wave, a WAV. So you can just add them on as well. So I've got all these sample packs down here that don't come with Ableton Live. You will have to purchase these separately. So you can add on any of these samples, or you can add on the ones that come with Ableton Live. This kick will do. So all we have to do is drag it over, and you'll notice it makes this wave here. And we've got different controls for the sample as well. We have volume, transposition, so if you want to make it higher or lower, you can do that. So let's just play the kick. Okay, we will have to add some MIDI information as well. Generally, I like to have the kick on C1. You might notice you can't actually hear it. That's because this little headphone icon isn't turned on. If you hit this headphone icon, then you play it. And you will need to make sure this triangle is played. It's really quiet. Oh, and of course, the other track is soloed. Error by me. That's one thing to remember when you're adding tracks. Make sure the other ones aren't soloed. There we go. It's quite quiet still. So we can turn it up with this volume knob here. So it's on minus 12 dB. So let's put it up to... Here's a good volume. Like minus 8, okay. You can change the transposition, make it higher. Or lower. There's good, minus 2. We can change where the wave actually starts. So it doesn't have to start right at the beginning of the wave, we could start here. Change the endpoint as well. We can also add a filter as well. So if we go down here, see filter, and change the resonance. We can change the type of filter. Turn the filter off. Move this back to the start. Okay, and that's really how the drum rack works. We can add, of course, other instruments like a snare. We can test them out here. Try this one. I like to have the snare in D. It depends where you want it. Same kind of thing. Let's actually type in the snare on the MIDI information now, so we can just build it up. So the snare on the 2 and then the 4. It's a bit loud, I think. So we can actually go through and independently change the volume. So I'm going to turn the snare down. Let's try here. And let's just play these. So I was just changing the transposition on the snare. And one amazing thing we can do in the drum rack as well is independently add on effects. So we're going to be looking at MIDI and audio effects in a bit more detail in the next section, step 3. But I'll just quickly throw on a reverb just to show you what you can actually do with the drum rack. So all we have to do is go to audio effects, get rid of whatever you've typed in up here. So I typed in snare. Okay, and let's find a reverb and just literally just drag it over, and that'll independently put an effect on that sample or that part of the drum rack. Okay, so now you'll notice there's no reverb on the kick drum, but there is on the snare. Okay, great. So that's kind of the drum rack. That's how it works. Of course, there's other stuff we can add as well. If we want to add, say, a hi-hat, and we can swap between the two views as well. Let me just move out the way. So we can swap between the drum rack view and the MIDI information by hitting these buttons here at the bottom, just to let you know. Okay, let's add on a hi-hat quickly. Let's go back to samples up here and type in hi. Type in hats. There we go. Okay, and same kind of thing. We can change the transposition, we can change the volume, and if we go back down here, we can actually type in the hats. So what we can do is we can either double tap on the MIDI information up here, or we can hit one of the buttons in the bottom right, and this will swap between the drum rack and the MIDI view. It's the same with audio, but obviously it swapped to audio rather than MIDI. Okay, so just really simple. And let's just hear the drums now. We can change the velocity as well. So if you want to change the velocity, we can change it with the pencil tool. So sometimes you don't want the velocity the same for all the hi-hats. We can turn off this pencil as well by hitting B. We can undo by hitting Command and Z, same as other applications. Just go through, and if you select what you want to change, this will select it in the velocity down here at the bottom. Because sometimes, for example, here there is a kick drum and a hi-hat. I don't want to change the kick drum, I want to change the hi-hat. So if I select the hi-hat, I can change the velocity down here. This kind of thing. Just to get a bit more of a roll, make it sound less robotic, make it sound a bit more natural sounding, because this is quite a natural sounding hi-hat. Let's hear this now. There's a bit more of a roll to it. I think it's a bit loud as well. I might pitch it a bit higher. Add a filter if you want. Kind of thing. Okay. So this is how we use, the instruments in Ableton Live. So for instruments, all we literally have to do is hit instrument. We've got a load of different ones here. I recommend just going through them all, going through all the presets rather than me just showing them all. But now I'm going to quickly show you the sampler. We have two different types of samplers. We have the simpler and the sampler. I'm just going to show you the simpler, which is basically just a really basic version of the sampler. If you want to have a look at the sampler in more detail, I recommend checking out my complete Ableton Live 9 course. So if you go to thomasgeorge.com, or if you visit my academy, u.thomasgeorge.com, I have got a complete Ableton Live 9 course where I go through all this stuff in a lot more detail. But this is just really a crash course for anyone that's brand new to Ableton Live and they just want to start making music and just realize how this actually works. Because when you first look at it, it looks quite complex. But after a while, you realize how stuff works. You just realize it's different to other digital audio workstations. Kind of does the same thing, but has some amazing features like the simpler, the sampler, the drum rack, and the warping feature as well. Okay, so the simpler just brings up this thing here. So it says drop samples here. Let's just zoom in. Drop samples here. So all we have to do is quite literally get a sample and drop it in. And that's it, yeah. So let's find a sample. Let's go back to our samples here. Let's type in voice. Let's try one of these. This will do. This is the Vox U. Okay. So what it's done is it's got the sample and it's put it into this sampler. Just a really basic sampler, really. Okay, so we've got a few different things going on here. So let's just have a look. So we've got classic one-shot slice. We can also change where we want this to be. So we can change where we want the sample to start. So I've got a MIDI keyboard right now I'm just playing. You'll notice if I go up the MIDI keyboard, it plays higher. If I go down the MIDI keyboard, it plays lower. So you can actually pitch up really high if you want. Even higher for wish. So I could change where it finishes, the sample. Now actually loop round and round. You'll notice it'll loop round and round. So we can just change where we want the sample. Okay. We have different things like attack. So if we increase the attack, it takes longer to actually hear the sample. It takes longer to come in. Sustain, release. So let go of the key there and it's still playing. So release is how long it actually plays for. We have the volume as well. LFO, which is a low frequency oscillator. So we can change that. So it gives kind of a pulse really. Let's just leave LFO for now. Change the number of voices. Doesn't make too much difference to this sample. We can change the filter. I'm just quickly going through this. We can change the warp type. So let's change the tones. Okay, completely different sound here. We can turn warp on and off. Okay, let's just go back to beats. I'm just quickly going through this. Just for anyone who's brand new to this, rather than giving you an in-depth detailed description of the simpler and the sampler. So this is kind of how the simpler works. It's just really, a basic way of just throwing stuff in. And then we can even type it in on our piano roll, or we can type it in with our MIDI keyboard. So I'm just going to type something in here. Let's go up the octave actually. So just kind of playing a C minor 7. If you're not used to music theory, I do actually have a complete music theory course as well. If everyone is interested in learning a bit more music theory, can always help, especially with electronic music. Okay, so let's just hear this. So this is just on the simpler. You can also just drag this up an octave. You might notice that's a lot lower than what I just played. If you hit Command and A, select all, and hit Shift and the up arrow, so we'll bring it up and down an octave. We can select this headphone icon on the side, which means we can hear it. Let's try here, okay? Try it down an octave. Okay, that kind of thing. You can always go back to the simpler and move some of this stuff around. So just lower the sustain there. Make it more punchy sounding. Okay, this kind of thing. So this is really how you can use the instruments, the drum rack and the simpler in Ableton Live 9. So next we're going to be looking at step 3, which is all about MIDI and audio effects. Okay, now we're going to look at MIDI and audio effects. Hopefully you're starting to understand how Ableton Live 9 works now, especially if you're brand new to it, because like I said, when you first jump into Ableton, it can be a bit scary, and because it's just different to a lot of other digital audio workstations like Logic or Pro Tools, it's really based on this clip view, the session view, but of course we can go back to the arrangement view by hitting tab. So what I've gone through so far is just really showing you the basics of how stuff actually works, and I've gone through the different instruments, the drum rack and the sampler. So now we're going to have a look at audio and MIDI effects. So we could actually create another clip below just by double clicking here, and we're going to start off with some MIDI effects. So I'm just going to zoom in and just type in with the B a C minor chord, which is C, E flat or D sharp and a G. And get rid of B, just drag this over. Okay, hit shift and the up arrow to actually put it up an octave. And now what I'm going to do, just get rid of the right in here, is go on to MIDI effects over here and drag on arpeggiator. Okay. Let's put this up an octave. So what an arpeggiator does is it just plays through the notes of the chord. So if there's 3 notes in the chord, it plays through these 3 notes. But there's a few other things we can do as well. So let's just zoom in on this arpeggiator. So we can change the rates, how fast we want it really. We can change the gate, so really how punchy the note sounds. How fast it opens and closes the gate. Really want it, if you want it to sound more punchy, you want to have a lower gate. If you want to make it sound a bit smoother, have a higher gate. It's basically how it works. Steps is how many octaves. So it will go up octaves if we increase the steps like this. Can transpose it. We can also change the style. At the moment it's going up, so it's playing through that way. Down. I recommend just going through some of these just to see what they actually do. There's a few weird ones like pinky up. Of course, it will play the arpeggiator for the material before, basically the riff I made before. Because it's so small, the notes are just 16th notes, that it won't actually arpeggiate these. But if you've played a chord, it will. And also when you've just got one note, it will just repeat that one note unless you've got a different octave selected. So unless you've changed the octaves here, which I have done, the steps, it will just play the same note over and over again. What we can do is we can actually hold down Alt, and we can just drag down some of these clips as well. The reason we might want to do this is we can trigger all these clips with the arrow button on the right. So we can trigger so this just allows us to kind of trigger the different patterns we have. We can change the amount here with bar. So at the moment I have it set on bar. For live performance, sometimes you might want to bash in some rhythms yourself, but I normally just leave it on 1 bar. Okay, so that's the arpeggiator. We do have loads of other effects as well, like chords, pitch, random scale, velocity. I'll show you chord now. Let's just drag on chord onto the MIDI instrument. And chord basically, yeah, just allows us to kind of add on a chord, so add on more notes. So a 7th is a 5th, a 12th is an octave. So I'm just going to shift this down 1 octave, up a 5th, and also, up and up another octave. Be careful when you use this. You can make stuff sound a little bit crazy, but it depends what effect you're after. Let's hear this now. So you hear without the chord and with the chord. let's try and move it before the arpeggiator so we can actually move stuff around, because that's adding the chord after the arpeggiator. If we do it now, there we go. The order of the effects does matter, because now the MIDI information is coming in here, and then it's going through the chord, then it's going to the arpeggiator. So now I've just got an octave lower, an octave above. If you're ever stuck, just use octaves, because octaves always work. Okay, so that's just an example of some of the MIDI instruments. Now let's have a look at the audio effects. So these are the ones you'll more be used to, stuff like flanger, chorus, reverb. There's a really cool one called ping pong delay, which I like to use quite a lot. Let's actually add this onto the snare. So I've gone to the drum rack up here, just held down this effect, and it allows you to drag and choose. Let's add this to the snare. Okay, so let's click on snare. You'll see there's reverb. You'll see there's reverb here and ping pong delay. I want the ping pong delay before the reverb, so I can just click and drag it before. And now let's just let's play this. If you can hear the snare. So it's delaying and panning. So we can choose the feedback, we can choose the wet. Let me just increase the volume. Can you hear that? Yeah. So we have different patterns here. Adds a bit of effects, just makes it sound a bit more interesting to me. There's other stuff we can do as well, so let's add let's try EQ8. This is an EQ if you're used to EQs. This allows you to change the frequencies. So if you're actually used to any other digital audio workstation, I'm sure you know what an EQ is, but if you're brand new, this just basically allows us to change the frequencies. So this is the frequencies of the bass synth to the synthesizer. And we can just move these around. This is the wave that's coming through. So I'm just going to solo this bass synth. Here the bass has gone. It's because I've cut out the bass frequencies. So if you really want to sculpt a sound, if you want to make space for an instrument, EQ is kind of essential. And add on more points here by clicking these buttons. This just allows us to drag more points around. We can choose the type as well, so we can cut off the high, cut off the low. So that's basically the EQ. I'm not going to go through all of these. Like I say, if you do want a more comprehensive guide, I recommend checking out my complete course if you go to u.tomasgeorge.com. But yeah, this is just me just going through quickly how you can use some of these audio effects. So I recommend just going through and experimenting. And this is how you can use the MIDI effects and the audio effects in Ableton Live 9. So next is step 4. Okay, welcome to step 4. Now we're going to have a look at actually recording to the arrangement view. So first of all, let's actually stop all clips. We do this with this button down here. This will stop all the clips that are active. And then we need to make sure any track is not soloed. So if you have a look, let's move yourself out the way. This track here was soloed. So if we unsolo this, and now what we can do is play these clips here and then record this to the arrangement. We can actually make a bit more of an arrangement. So we can drag these around. So for example now, notice it sounds, there's gaps because we're making the arrangement. So we can actually go through and delete certain stuff. So for example here, I'm going to take out all the kicks. So if I hold down the kicks here and just delete them, I'm going to color this slightly different so I know it's a different track. And then I'm going to hold down Alt, drag the drums here, have the bass going the whole way, and then maybe add this and then finish with that. Okay, really simple, maybe not the best song in the world, but let's just play this, make sure all clips are stopped with this button on the right over here. Hit the stop button at the top, then all we have to do is hit record. So hit this button here, record, and then play, and then trigger the clips with these triangles over here. Okay, so let's do this. Now this is actually recording to the arrangement. So I'm going to trigger the other one here. Okay, and the third one. You can always go back again. We can actually independently stop these clips as well if we want, these square buttons here. Okay, and then I'm going to hit stop. And that actually recorded to the arrangement. We can check this by hitting the tab button. You see we've got this kind of cleared out data. To unclear it, we have to make sure this button is unchecked. So we've got this orange box. If we click it, it'll disappear and then we can see our data. Okay, so if we just click at the start and hit spacebar, you'll notice it will play what I just recorded in. So it played exactly what we did. This is awesome for any live performance. If you're doing a live gig, if you're doing a video, you can actually record what you're doing in Ableton. So instead of miking stuff up using audio interfaces, if you're just using a MIDI controller, like the Push 2 or something like this, you can actually just record it all in, and then you've got this perfect sounding recording afterwards. And you can actually go through and edit and manipulate the arrangement, which we're going to look at step 5, which is editing in the arrangement view. Okay, now we're going to have a look at editing in the arrangement view. So previously we made some beats in the session view, and now we're going to actually edit these in the arrangement view. Of course, we had to record to the arrangement view, but I hope you're starting to understand kind of the basics of Ableton Live now. It's really the way I like to do it is make some clips in the session view, record it to the arrangement view, and then edit it in the arrangement view, which I'm going to show you now. And then you can bounce or export this. That's kind of how Ableton Live works, the really basic overview. Okay, so if we double click on one of these instruments, the top one here is the bass synth. So let's just click on this. It will bring up our synthesizer and the EQ. So if I click on, say, this knob here, which is the volume knob, you'll notice up here, it says volume. If I click on, say, this frequency knob on the EQ, it's actually changed to frequency. So whatever you click in the instrument or the effect will actually change up here, which is the automation. So let's change the volume. So I'm going to click on volume down here. And I'm just going to actually just drag the volume down a little. Actually, just put it up a little bit, up to 3.2 dB. And now I'm going to click on this frequency button. Okay, and now I can actually change the frequency. So let's drag it up like so. You'll notice if I solo the bass by hitting this S button over here, because we can independently solo tracks in the arrangement view as well as the session view, you'll notice the frequency will change. Let's make it more obvious. So at the moment it's just frequency number 5. So if we click on frequency number 1 here, let's just go back actually, you'll notice frequency number 5 is changing. We don't want frequency number 1. So if we click on the 1 down here, we can change the frequency. Like so, you know, see that move down there? Okay, let's try that. And now we can change this frequency. So if we start here, you'll see the EQ moving like crazy. So let's start like this and then bring it down. Okay, so at the start it kind of brings the bass in the frequency. Okay, we can do the same with the drum rack. So let's do something a bit wild. Let's actually click on the kick. Okay, and then I'm going to click on transposition here. So we're going to change the transposition in the automation. So you notice here that it says transpose for kick. Okay, and remember it's -2, but let's start off. Let's be a bit weird and start off really high. Let's start off plus 12. So it's not going to be, so it's minus 2. So let's try plus 14. So it's a whole octave higher than when the actual kick comes in. Okay, ready? Let's unsolo the bass and just listen out for the kick drum. So we have this filtered bass. And ready for the kick? It's going to be high. Gradually goes down. So you can do some crazy stuff like that if you want as well. Okay, and now let's just quickly export this. There's so much more you can do with Ableton Live. So just drag these arrows up here to where you want to start and finish. It's basically high export, and just go to File, Export, choose a name, call it Example Ableton. Okay. It'll take, depending how long your track is, probably not that long. Let's just have a quick listen to this. Won't play through that, it's not the best song in the world, but it's just an example of how you can actually get started and start making beats and just put some tracks together. Hopefully now you kind of understand Ableton Live isn't that scary. It is possible to make music straight away. It's just kind of mainly understanding the session view and the arrangement view. It's just different to other digital audio workstations, but it does allow you to do a lot more, especially in live performance, especially if you want to throw down loads of ideas quickly. What I do a lot of the time, so I just make loads and loads of ideas in the clips. I'll go through and arrange, find the best bits, record it to the arrangement, and then change a few of the stuff around in the arrangement, and then bounce it, export it. That's basically it. So this has been my 5 steps to Ableton Live, which were, step 1, the arrangement, the session view. Step 2, instrument racks and samplers. Step 3, MIDI audio effects. Step 4, recording to the arrangement. And step 5, editing in the arrangement. Like I said, if you do want to continue learning with me, want to check out my complete Ableton Live 9 guide, my complete course, check out you.tomasgeorge.com, or my website, tomasgeorge.com. If you even want to book a call with me, I might have some spaces available. Just check out tomasgeorge.com/call. So thank you again for watching this 5-step beginner's guide. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you soon.